Right, we've got a number of pieces to cover now. And well, first, this was written by one of the members, and I agree. These clowns and baboons. Now, a baboon is a congress, and so Congress is a gaggle of baboons. They care not who you vote for, just as long as you vote. Two cheeks of the same ass, two wings of the same bird, one big team of spoiled special boy girl reprobates. They just want our consent, giving away our power to be ruled, judged, or controlled. Consent, control, and total domination is their game, which I've stopped playing many moons ago. When we walk away, don't comply, consent, feed it our energy, it eventually goes bye-bye, as the new route is taken and being built. It's just enough people haven't realised this concept yet, but they are catching on now. Yes, and I agree. And yet people still voted, fraudulently or otherwise, for a 77-year-old with signs of senility, as well as masks, as their president and tasked to fix a whole country. Does anyone else not think that is only not plainly wrong, but bizarre in the extreme? Most have parents or grandparents at that age. Would you expect your parents or grandparents to run a country at age 77? And yet 70 to 80 million people voted for that. Now, with the election finally declared all over, bar some shouting and lots of distraction and maybe courts and all the other malarkey that will go on between now and probably January the 20th, distraction phases. The key now is what happens next. I was kind of reminded in the past week of my hypothetical piece from September of 2018, and it came to pass. As in that piece, I warned of Trump's lack of grey area support, which is essential in politics. The swing voter, those who are unable to decide for themselves and ultimately run with a majority vote or a protest vote. Trump divided people. There's no question of that, regardless of political party affiliation. He's just one of those characters that people either love or hate. There's no in between. And in political circles, that can be damaging. Last week's election was a protest vote against Trump, the person. Even by Republicans. Because surely nobody in the country actually believes Biden will be of any use for we the people. He's no use to himself, never mind anybody else. Will Biden stay there for the 4 years? Or does my 12+1 or 13-point plan done a month or two back also come to fruition? And the frightening prospect of the she-devil Pelosi being president. A Speaker of the House who cannot speak is another stick for the rest of the world to beat Americans with. But we at THI have a plan for ourselves, of which then we can decide what happens next on a big scale with the right support. With all the disillusioned Trump supporters, what happens next for them? What happens to Q? What happens to the QAnons? What happens to the trustee who threw her hat into one ring only? These are the biggest what happens next questions for us all. Now, Trump had generated a big following and amassed a Q-based army of followers. How will they all feel now, with what they believed was a guaranteed win? And no doubt they're all now getting quite a ribbon, but not as much as the Q followers. For the best part of 4 years, Q led people down a rosy garden path of mass arrests, booms, panic in DC, and the now classic line of nothing can stop what is coming. Except what came was no mass arrests, no JFK alive, a whimper instead of a boom, and a panic arrived in the White House, and what was coming for a man in his middle 70s who stutters and stammers and couldn't even remember whether he was running for Senate or President. So no Q, you didn't stop what was coming. You led people down the garden path of promises and a wake club. Now, I would be delighted to be proven wrong, but how long can we carry on with the secret plan no one knows of and a secret chess game that delivers no gains in 4 years? None. But at least you did get people to research for themselves, and for that we thank you. But with no Trump now, presumably there'll be no Q either. Or will they roll on as some Biden agitator? QAnons now with no Q, no Trump and no Twitter accounts. What happens to them? And then we have the trustee, who also relied on Trump and to a lesser degree Q. With her reputation with the Democrats at a very, very poor level, how will she continue now? Now, it could be said that the trustee should be impartial, and that is not a critique, but it is an observation. But if you're going to represent the all as the Eve, then surely that must include Democrats as well. Although I don't envy her having to talk to Pelosi. One of the problems Kim may have is her White House insider Tom may now lose his job as well, as the DNC-led Citadel Group threw him out of the Treasury building 2 years ago. They know who he works with and for. And I hope he doesn't, as I quite like that guy. And like me, he has worked for Kim for the past 4 years for free as well. But if Trump goes away and builds a media empire, as hypothecated, then perhaps Lifeforce can take advantage of that platform. So what happens next? Well, I hope THI and more so the TPC gains a lot of subscribers from the now dormant Q and Trump followers. And we can build a country in our image, not theirs. But that image has to be better than what has gone on previously. And essentially now we have 4 years to build our own community. And I'm asking all the alt media to get behind it. Because this division of groups has ran its course. It has not worked for us, and separation only helps the system. We have built the TPC for us all to participate in, regardless of what group you follow. Because this is not a subject-based group. This is for the all, and all people to build a plan and a group for and by the people for the first time in history. Another comment that came from one of the members who said, in my opinion, people have not suffered enough to take action. He said, I'm not saying that suffering is needed, but many do not use their brain enough to see where the current world is going. As a saying goes, smart learn from mistakes of others, and the dumb from their own. And sadly, many are just too dumb or too dumbed down by the current society to see and act on what is happening. Absolutely, that was spot on. And we can deny the fact or do something about it. Crying over fake ballots and election results, over two candidates that was chosen for you to be selected to be a president of a corporation known as USA Inc. that operates like a government, but is most definitely not, is pure folly. To become a full-blown adult, you have to stop relying on government to fix your problems. It's no different to being a child asking for parents to fix their problems. And at which point in life do we fix our own problems? Governments have never fixed our problems. They have just pacified us enough to not complain, nothing more and nothing less. But those pacifying levels have reduced drastically over the past 40 years, and we are now far too readily accept the pittance we receive. How much do you wish to suffer before you do something valid to stop your suffering and the suffering of many others? That is the great question. As Cassandra said, that there has always been people who will try on behalf of a select few, but they are rejected by your own people. And evidence of that has been all too clear for THI this year, with Shane, Randy, Jimmy, Alan, Ava and Kim doing varying degrees of stupidity and divide and conquer tactics. Two people this week I spoke to said, I love your idea of the TPC, but it will take too much time and we need it now. But I started the TPC 4 years ago. And in part, and I have to take some responsibility for that as well, we waited in some part for the trust funds. But people waited 4 years for Trump to deliver. People waited 8 years for Obama to bring change. People are waiting 13 years for an RV, currency revaluation. People waited 15 to 20 years for birth certificate and strawman accounts. People waited for the same duration for San Germain accounts. People have waited 15 years for Nasara funds. People have waited 6 years for Jessara funds. People have waited 8 years for Neil Keenan to deliver the collateral accounts. People have waited 18 years for mass arrests. People have waited 3.5 years for Q to fix things. And people have waited 21 years for Gould and Win Miller to fix the world. People have waited 10 years plus for common law to save them. People have waited 8 years for BRICS to save the world. People have waited for 9 years of 2 weeks promises. People have waited 25 years for ETs to save them. People have waited 3,000 years for Muhammad to save them. People have waited 2,000 years for Jesus to save them. And people wait and pray every day for God to save them. What is the common denominator in that? We waited for others to fix or save us. How has that worked out for us? The same effect that praying each day does. 0. God is a convenient cop-out for laziness and a lesson in service to self only. Why? Because you pray to God to save you. You pray to God to help you. You pray to God to keep your well-beings, jobs, family, possessions, and life. All about you. And that is service to self. And I know that statement will be a trigger for some, and some will be calling me out right now. But the trigger is, I've just told you the truth. Whether you like it or you don't, it is the truth at the core of what was said. Look at it again for yourself and you'll realise I've just told you where you are and what you are currently. But you're not in the minority, far from it. Most other people do exactly the same thing. Even atheists, when in trouble, call for God to save them. So it makes no difference whether you are religious or not. Has that worked out for you? If your answer is yes, I can't help you. But if your answer is no, then the question remains is, what happens next? Do we wait for the next lazy-based narrative to come along and fund or save us? Or do we build for the first time in history a group for and by the people? And waiting another 4 years to then say, I wish we had built the People's Club because I don't like these two candidates and I don't like having no job, savings, businesses or homes, because by then it'll be too late. All these protests and petitions signed by the few matters not one jot to the old system, but tens of millions of TPC generating intelligent and solution-based petitions with tens of millions supporting it lets them know we not only mean business, but we are their business and we will be in their face daily. That, should it unfold, terrifies the globalists. We have to end the American trait of things must happen today or tomorrow. Life is not a takeaway drive-in booth. It requires patience. The patience word. Patience. It requires thinking, experiencing, learning and no little effort on all of our parts to make it better. We have spent 40 years letting everything go. Freedoms, lifestyles, manners, thinking, human rights. And now you have to stay in your homes and wear masks like the naughty children. Are you a child or are you an adult? Is your behaviour childlike of asking others to save or fix you, or will you be an adult and save and fix yourself and then help others to do the same? The choice is simple. You are asking the one to save billions. I am asking the billions to save the one, and the one is the all. One of the few potential positives of this global lockdown and also global financial squeeze will not be felt or seen currently, but in the future, unless you view the now in overview and future thinking. So what is the potential positives? Well, for the vast majority outside of the billionaire level, will all be reduced to lower incomes and jobs. Too many still immersed in the old world of greed. That appears like a disaster, but in overview it's not. Why? Because this world and its people have created a system of the haves and have-nots, and there is far more have-nots in this world suffering from dire poverty, malnourishment, poor health, living conditions and lifestyles. I've said this before, but we in the Western world, by and large, with a home, food on the table, clean water, a sewage system and clothing, are all actually in the top 15% of the real wealth on this planet. And some are in the top 10%. And to the so-called second and third world countries with just the 5 basics, to them we live like kings, and yet we all take it for granted and still complain. Mainly about minimum wage, which is correct in real terms. But minimum wage, say at $10 per hour, is 5 times the rate of per day, not hour, for millions of people around the world. In the USA alone, there are 18,314,698 millionaires. Yes, you heard that right. 18 million millionaires, and yet there is 35 million living in poverty. Those 18 million millionaires are why 35 million people live in poverty. Through a basic lack of sharing. And they are also responsible for the 45 million on food stamps in this country also. That is a greed-based system that ultimately now will fail us all, as those millionaires are now starting to be harvested by the ultimate in pure greed, the billionaires. There is zero need to have $1 million or more sitting in a bank account, as that creates shortage further down the line. And what it also does is it creates, in many cases, a dance onto the dark paths. It is no coincidence that those with the most money are by and large psychopaths. Period. And we in the Western world need to get more perspective. We have become obsessed with keeping up with the Joneses program, a comparative-based earning scheme that is largely achieved based in debt. That's what it is at the core. A comparative-based earning scheme that is largely achieved based in debt. The American middle class is and was an illusion. It's not based on wages earned, but based on how much debt you could put yourself into. Be honest, we've all done it, yourself included. The credit rating system tells you that the more debt you have, the higher your credit rating, as long as you make a payment. But if you don't have any loans or use credit cards, you don't have a credit rating. But credit in their world is classed to us as a debt. As debts are then leveraged to create more debts and then passed on to the consumer in terms of interest rates. But those interest rates are not to pay our debts, but theirs. And it's the same with the trust. Assets of countries contained within it were accumulating interest. When the old system stated it was creating interest payments and so debt. No, those assets are interest bearing. And with jobs, incomes and businesses vanishing and shopping items becoming unessential purchases, what we are actually witnessing now is the vanishing of the materialistic world in front of our eyes. It's unfolding. And to many, this will initially bring great hardship of their fallen lifestyles. But in overview, it can also bring some much needed perspectives as well. And a desire to share the wealth more fairly and ultimately looking after each other more, rather than harvesting each other. Some people have sent me certain things I should look at, or I should change my opinion on technology. But I'm not interested in being convinced that technology can work for us at this point. So I'm not interested in blockchain, Bitcoin, or any other fresh air tokens, digital wallets, or app banking. Why? Because nobody really understands blockchain, period. It's a bit like law. You think you know it, you don't. And blockchain is an agency-based system, and you don't think they created it for our purpose, did you? Bitcoin is also an agency-created entity, just like encryption. And again, you don't think they created it for our purpose, did you? Fresh air tokens are not for we the people. It is a seducement program designed to pull people in who chase the money. Digital wallets or app banking is the exact same program that Bitcoin and the Facebook coin Libra are running. No banks, central or otherwise, is what they're planning. Decentralization, it is called. They told you that in the manifesto. Again, the people who follow that rhetoric are people who chase the money. And the few of THI who went to Lifeforce are doing just that, chasing the money. There's no ifs or buts. You chased the money. And I'm okay with your choice, as it's where you are at on a personal level. You still have the old system programming like many other people do. But don't rail at me for pointing out that fact. The Kim has the promise of trust funds, and that is your lure. But whilst it is valid, there are no guarantees of it being released to we the people anytime soon, unless clowns put in place a backup program to harvest it another way. This is what the distraction is now. They are planning for their electronic world, but also a backup if they don't. And the backup is to release the funds to the people, but only when they have control of all the businesses. They will then collect the money we spend and start it all again. And this is something Kim should be pondering long and hard on, and not as reported to me by several people this week, and a quote of giggling like a little schoolgirl and gloating with Tank because one of THI members helped them out. That's embarrassing behaviour, and more people are noticing it. And it makes no difference to me, but it's not my validity and reputation that's being shredded. It was not a good look, I'm told, but they are the gift that keep giving currently, and the behaviour patterns become indicative. But it's the oldest trick in the book, all designed to hook you into a money program, just like the dinar, dongs and zims of the RV program, and people wasted thousands of real money on it due to people like Tank promoting it. Tank cost many of his friends and associates thousands of dollars and put many of them out of their homes and businesses due to his promotion of a fake program. Something is not really addressed. But the Clowns in Panic show revealed it all. And it's disappointing to me that people who've been made aware of what they're up to are sleepwalking into their path and trap with fresh air tokens, digital wallets and banking apps. With no banks planned for the future, what are the banking apps for? Think about that. There's a lot of talk surrounding make yourself a sovereign citizen recently. And someone posted someone who'd done it in the UK. And it's particularly common amongst the common law people. But personally, whilst it's a good idea to reclaim your status, as it stands, it can become an issue later in life. Because currently under the citizen status, you are supported in part by the state should you get unemployed or have or obtain a disability, and also have a pension whether you work or not, particularly in the UK. And it's also related to the UK for free healthcare. No, it's not exactly free. Not to the people who work, it isn't. But here is the kicker if you remove your strawman status, because it's my understanding those benefits afforded to you are no longer available unless they've changed a law recently. So this obtaining recognised sovereignty only becomes a useful goal should you gain access to your trust account created at birth, as only then do you have the funds to cover those eventualities and also the free health issue. Sovereignty declares you outside of the system, but as I understand, you don't retain or gain benefits from the system for the rest of your life. and it's something that people need to look into when applying for that status. You must gain access to your trust account to then fund your sovereign choice. Things that make you go, when you find out that the globalist company called Dell, the computer firm, who are third leading computer specialists after Lenovo and HP, reveals this piece. Michael Dell, who like Bill Gates had connections to IBM or IB Marduk, who have the Watson AI system. Now, Gates got all his ideas from IBM, and Michael Dell sold IBM PC-compatible computers until forming his own company called Dell Computer Corporation. But Dell works with agency-related goons. Listen closely to this piece. On November the 19th, 2015, Dell, alongside ARM Holdings, Cisco Systems, Intel, Microsoft, and Princeton University, founded the Open Fog Consortium to promote interests and development in fog computing. Fog networking consists of a control plane and a data plane. For example, on the data plane, fog computing enables computing services to reside at the edge of the network as opposed to servers in a data center. Compared to cloud computing, fog computing emphasizes proximity to end users and client objectives. For example, operational costs, security policies, resource exploitation. Dense geographical distribution and context awareness for what concerns computational and IoT resources. IoT is Internet of Things. But what things? Latency reduction and backbone bandwidth savings to achieve better quality of service. And the fog networking supports the Internet of Things concept, in which most of the devices used by humans on a daily basis will be connected to each other. Fog networking, in which most of the devices used by humans on a daily basis will be connected to each other. Do people not ask, why is there now several references to us as humans is cropping up everywhere? What are they differentiating us from? Even Kim did it in a recent podcast, I'm told, referring to us as you humans. Why are they suddenly calling us humans? Perhaps we may find out soon. Examples include phones, wearable health monitoring devices, connected vehicle and augmented reality using devices, such as Google Glass or Go Glass. SPAWAR, SPAWAR, a division of the US Navy, is prototyping and testing a scalable, secure, disruption fault-tolerant mesh network to protect strategic military assets, both stationary and mobile. Machine control applications running on the mesh nodes take over when the internet connectivity is lost. And use cases include Internet of Things, for example, smart drone swarms. Take note of that. ISO/IEC 20248 provides a method whereby the data of objects identified by edge computing using automated identification data carriers, AIDC, a barcode, second time we've mentioned that tonight, and or an RFID tag can be read, interpreted, verified and made available into the fog and on the edge when the AIDC tag has moved on. Perhaps I best repeat that last sentence again. It provides a method whereby the data of objects identified by edge computing, slightly outside, not based in data servers, using automated identification data carriers, a barcode and or RFID tag can be read, interpreted, verified and made available into the fog and on the edge, even when the AIDC tag has moved on. All of this we warned of in the Clouds in Panic show. Everything is about tagging everything now. Data mining for the AI system to run the world. That's what they're planning. But then, when you find out this, Dell Remote Access Controller, a remote access card available in many models of Dell servers. You not worked it out yet? Dell Remote Access Controller, DRAC, or Draconian. Then you add this in and a picture emerges. Dynamic Relay Authorization Control, or DRAC for short, which is a daemon that dynamically updates a relay authorization map for send mail. Why have Dell, with their AI computers, got two anagrams of DRAC? But then when you look at the Dell logo with one letter fallen over, you are left with DLL, which is another computer term called Direct Link Library. The letter left fallen is the E, which E fell. When you add in Dell, which took over a popular PC gaming network in 2006 called Alienware, perhaps your pondering reaches deeper levels now. But with that knowledge and thinking mindset, perhaps this next piece has more meaning or makes more sense now. You decide after the break.